Each year, around January 1st, polar bear moms give birth to tiny, helpless cubs weighing only about 1 kilogram, the size of a block of butter. The family spends most of the winter snuggled up in a den with mom nursing her babies. These tiny cubs are completely reliant on their mother, and their only food source is her milk. Compared to the milk you put on your cereal, which is usually 1 to 3% fat, polar bear milk starts around 31% fat. When cubs are first born, the fatty milk helps them grow quickly. In only 2 or 3 months, the cubs can already be 10 times bigger than when they were born. And once they're strong enough, mother polar bears know it's time to emerge from their dens. Spring is a very special time of year for polar bear moms and their newborn cubs. The family has just emerged after having spent most of the winter snuggled together in a den. This is the first time the cubs will feel the sun on their faces, the cold wind in their fur, and the snow crunching beneath their paws. The family will stay at their den site for a few days or weeks, giving the cubs a chance to play, explore, and strengthen their legs. The cubs are about the size of a big puppy by now, 7 to 11 kilograms. And though their mom has decided that they're ready to come out of the den, they're still totally dependent on her. It's incredible that at this point the mother polar bear has not eaten for months, all the while nursing and caring for her cubs. In the Hudson Bay region, mother polar bears can go up to 8 months without food. When the mother decides her cubs are ready, they begin the trip from their den to the vast frozen ocean where seals are abundant and mom can fatten up again. Hopefully, her cubs are strong and mom has enough energy for the long journey ahead. Bears near the Hudson Bay sometimes walk for a week or more and can cover over 100 kilometers to get to the sea ice. Though she's focused on finding seals to feed her family, mom will continue to nurse her cubs for as long as they're with her. As they grow older, the cubs will need less milk and more solid food. The good news is that spring is when seals give birth to their pups in snow caves on the sea ice. This means easy meals for hungry families. At this point, the cubs begin their new journey, learning how to be a polar bear in their Arctic home. From walking on the shifting sea ice, to swimming in frigid water, to avoiding potentially dangerous males, a mother polar bear will begin teaching her young cubs not only how to hunt, but how to simply survive in the Arctic. She has just over 2 years to teach her cubs everything they need to know to live on the frozen ocean. When a polar bear is looking for something to eat, they're looking for seals. Fat is where it's at for polar bears. Only seal blubber provides enough energy to power the biggest bear on the planet. Polar bears are good swimmers, but seals are a tough catch. Seals are much faster, so it's very difficult for bears to hunt them in open water. On the sea ice, polar bears can pounce on seal pups hidden in snow caves, patiently wait for a seal to come up for air at a breathing hole, or try to sneak up on a seal from behind an ice ridge. The Arctic is a harsh place to survive. There are no food sources on land with enough calories to sustain entire polar bear populations in the long term. Polar bears have adapted over the centuries to a life on the sea ice. In the Hudson Bay region, a warming Arctic means polar bears are spending over 1 month longer on land than their grandparents did. That's 1 month less to hunt seals and fatten up before the long ice-free period. For polar bears, fasting longer means worse health and less body fat. And for females, less body fat means it's harder to get pregnant, to feed nursing cubs, and to raise those cubs into the next generation, ultimately resulting in fewer polar bears across the Arctic. But we can help. The key to getting the climate back to functioning the way it should, and to preserving a future for polar bears across the Arctic, is to move away from using fossil fuels for energy altogether. The most important thing adults can do is to vote with the climate in mind, to let our leaders know we support a swift transition to renewable energy sources. The most important thing kids can do is talk about it. Let the adults in your life know you care. Share what you learn with your family and friends. Stay curious and ask questions. We can all make a difference outside our own households by influencing where our energy comes from. Polar bear moms and cubs can't speak up for themselves. They need us, our voices, and our votes. There is still hope, and if we work together, we can ensure polar bears roam the sea ice for generations to come.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Fall Polar Bears International Tundra Connection series. My name is Alysa McCall, and I'm here on the shores of Hudson Bay, and we are coming to you again live during the annual Polar Bear Gathering outside of Churchill, Manitoba. So we are here every fall watching the polar bears and bringing them to you, and along with that, hosting our series of educational webcasts. The topic today is marvelous moms and cubs. So I hope that you enjoyed that series of short videos about moms and cubs that is also available on our YouTube channel to use. Today, we'll be talking a little bit more about moms and cubs, why they're so amazing, and why we should all help protect them. If you have any questions about what you've seen or what we'll talk about today, please do put your questions in the chat box below the video on your screen. You should see a spot to pop in questions, and I will be monitoring them with the help of my amazing team, and I will answer as many as I can live. I do plan to talk for about 20 to 25 minutes today in total, so it will be short, but it will be fun, and let's just dive right in. So it is our favorite time of year here at Polar Bears International, where we all get to come to Churchill and see the polar bears. The polar bears are here because they are waiting for the sea ice to freeze up on the shores of Hudson Bay. So Hudson Bay is a special, massive ocean, a massive body of water. And in the summer in this part of the world, in Canada, there's no ice on it. But as we get closer and closer to winter, this bay will completely freeze over and the polar bears will head out onto the ice to hunt seals, which is their main prey. Polar bears eat seals because they rely on a diet high in fat, which means seal blubber, which has a ton of calories to power the world's biggest bear. At this time of year, though, of course, the bears have been on land for a couple months already. They're hanging out, they're hungry, and they are waiting. So we get to watch them wait. So it's pretty special. But today, of course, we are focusing more on moms and cubs, and they are so important because they are the most vulnerable in the population. It's really the moms with the cubs that matter so much to the future of polar bear populations. In this area that we're in, we're, of course, outside of Churchill, Manitoba, which is part of the Western Hudson Bay polar bear population. And this population has seen a decline from about 1,200 bears or so in the 1980s to closer to just over 600 today. So almost 50% loss. Now, what's happening is we're not seeing a bunch of polar bears starving to death. That's not what goes on. It just means it's getting harder and harder for females to give birth to cubs and to raise those cubs up into adulthood. And it's getting harder because the ice isn't around as long as it used to be. The polar bears in this area are on land for about 3 to 4 weeks longer than they used to be in the 1980s. And so there's more pressure on them. There's less time to hunt. And so they're consuming fewer calories. And over time, we see smaller bears and bears that have a harder time getting pregnant. So that's why we've seen that loss here. But that's what makes it an even more amazing place to come visit. We see an area of the world for polar bears that's changing fast. And these polar bears are teaching us a lot about the entire species and about what polar bears face in the world. For polar bear moms and cubs, we have some fun facts we want to tell you, and we want to also flag that we've got some really great materials for teachers to use in the classroom. We've got a Mom and Me curriculum lesson plan set, and we've got a fun fact page and a crossword or a search that kids can use too. So we love moms and cubs. We love talking about them and showing great pictures. So there's a few really interesting things that moms go through to have their cubs. So females will mate in the spring, And then they'll eat as much as they can during a period of time called hyperphagia in the spring. It's when seals are pupping and they have a lot of naive little seal pups. That's easy eating for polar bears, and polar bears get as fat as possible, including those females. And then they'll come onto shore in this area in the summer. Now, females need to be a certain body weight to stay pregnant healthily, which is true for any animal out there. All animals, you need to be a certain level of health before you can have a successful pregnancy. For polar bears, the lowest weight that we know of that a polar bear has successfully given birth at is about 420 pounds. So their body needs to be good and fat. And if they are fat enough, then they will sustain that pregnancy. So that's called delayed implantation, when an animal mates, so the polar bears mate, but they're not technically pregnant for a few months until their body knows it can handle it. If they are not fat enough at that point, then they just will flush any zygote and continue on their way back on the sea ice in the fall or the winter. Otherwise, if they stay pregnant, they'll go into a den. So right now, as I'm talking to you, there are polar bear females in their dens and they're resting up. They don't go into the technical state of hibernation, but they are slowing down. They're getting cozy, and they will give birth over the winter, likely maybe December or so. We give every cub a birthday of January 1st. And that's just to help us biologists keep track of all the bears and their ages. But they're not all born that day, of course. Now, when the cubs are born, they are so tiny. They're about the size of a stick of butter. You can see on your screen there, they're just so little compared to their mom, but they grow so, so fast. So polar bears have the fattiest milk that we find on land. And the mom's milk when the cubs are born is about 32-33%. It's about the fat of whipping cream. So it's got so much energy, so many calories, and those cubs grow so quickly. As they get older, their mom's milk will change and it will have less fat in it over time as the bears start eating other things. But at the moment when they're first born, they have to grow so quickly because in just a couple months, they will emerge from their dens. And at that time, mom will, she'll decide it's time to come out. They'll get out of the den and they'll hang out at the den site for maybe a few days, maybe a week or so. And you can see there, the cubs just kind of start learning what it is to be a polar bear. They get used to the cold, they get some strength, they play, they get used to their legs, and mom gets a little bit of rest. And then fairly soon they will head up and off to the sea ice. And in this part of the world, that could mean walking for, up to a week if they have to. They can cover a lot of ground, easily tens of kilometers, and they'll walk right out to the sea ice and try to time that just around when the seals are pupping. So there's lots of food to eat. Now, at that time, the mom has not eaten for about 8 months. So since she came off the ice, again, in this part of the world, since she came off the ice in June or July, and she will go until about March without eating. So it's really incredible. It's the longest, if not just one of the longest fasts in the animal kingdom that we know of. It's really, really fascinating. They are just such an amazing species. And at that point, mom will start teaching the cubs everything she knows right away. So they have to be really obedient. Polar bear cubs are very good listeners. They have to be. They're navigating the sea ice, which is moving beneath their feet. They hopefully don't have to swim much, but they might have to swim a little bit, and they can hitch a ride on mom's back. Mom is looking to avoid adult male polar bears and any other dangers to her cubs, and just keeping them safe out there on the sea ice. And they'll stay out there as long as they can and eat as much as they can before they return to land. The first year of a polar bear cub's life, they're called cubs of the year. And then when they're a year old, we start calling them yearlings. And then when they're 2 years old, they're called a 2-year-old, which makes sense. And once the cubs hit 2 years old, they have just a few more months left with mom. So at that point, hopefully they're, big enough that they could catch a seal on their own. But that's a hard period of life from when a polar bear gets weaned at just before 2.5 years until they're about 5 years old. They're called subadults. And those are kind of like the teenager polar bears. And they're not fully grown and they have a lot to learn. And then when they hit 5 years old, then they're technically an adult. But that period of time is probably a tough one for the bears. And some subadults kind of get into trouble and don't make the best decisions. And that's pretty normal in the animal kingdom as well, once animals leave their mom at first. But for 2.5 years, the cubs will be with mom and they will learn a lot. And if you want to kind of see what some families are doing, a really great resource to check out is our Polar Bears International Bear Tracker on our website. There's also some lessons and fun things that go along with the bear tracker. Every year, researchers in Western Hudson Bay and Southern Hudson Bay down in Ontario, our neighbor here, they collar some adult females, and we can only collar adult females because adult males have necks that are bigger than their heads, and the collars just can slide right off. So these are all adult females on here with collars, and many of them do have cubs. And if you click on the icons, you can read more about each bear, about how old her cubs are, how old she is, and learn a lot about what the bears are up to. And it's a really neat way to contrast and compare different families, different decisions polar bears make, and we can follow them throughout the year. So in the next couple weeks here, we'll have some of the same bears on the tracker, but we will be adding some new bears as well. And you can see what these families get up to all year round. So just as a reminder, if you've got any questions for me, please do pop them in the chat. And then I can take a few at the end, absolutely. Now, a couple of things we wanted to tell you just a little bit about research on moms and cubs, because if we can help protect moms and cubs, we can help protect the polar bear population. If we can add more cubs to the population, we can help stabilize the numbers and maybe even grow a polar bear population if the cubs are healthy and grow into healthy adults. So there's a couple of things that Polar Bears International is working on. And some of our main projects right now are in Norway, in an area called Svalbard, which is an island north of the mainland Norway, way, way, way up high. And there's an amazing area for denning moms and cubs all around Svalbard. It's a really, really special, spectacular place. And there's two main projects we have there. One is our maternal denning project. And this project has been going on for years and years and years to collect some really great data. So we're able to know where a polar bear is through a collar. We work with the Norwegian Polar Institute to locate where a denning female might be. We have researchers kind of sneak in there in the winter and set up these cameras that are powered by solar. They can sneak in really quietly on their skis, set up these cameras, and then sneak out. And then later, weeks later, when the mom emerges from the den with her cubs, these cameras are automatically recording. And we can see on the camera there what the moms are doing. We can count the cubs, see the condition the family's in, and we can learn a lot about what goes on at these den sites for moms and cubs with these cameras. Now, mom will eventually, of course, take her cubs back to the ice to hunt. And then we can sneak in later and grab the cameras when the polar bears are long gone. So we're not disturbing the polar bears, but we're learning a lot in the meantime. So it's a very interesting and cool project that's been long running now in Norway. And another great project to talk about is our radar project, this kind of SAR project we have, and that's synthetic aperture radar. So it sounds kind of fancy, but it's this little unit that we can use and attach to some sort of aircraft. So a plane or a helicopter or maybe even a drone. And the idea is that you fly this radar over an area where you think there might be dens. And this radar can see through the snow. It has like X-ray vision through the snow. And when we can look back at the footage that the radar collects, we can potentially see polar bear dens underneath the snow. Now, this is really valuable because if we were able to not disturb families, but fly over and see where they are under the snow, we would be able to tell people like industry folks where not to go. So one application of this could be in parts of the north that have oil drilling. If we were able to survey a region beforehand and see where the dens are, we could tell the people that are involved in industry and shipping and oil to not go within certain boundaries to protect those polar bears. And that can be really powerful. So we're also excited about that project. And I'm not sure if we have, we've got Albert, who's managing production behind the scenes today. Thank you, Albert. Do we have the sizzle reel available just to show some cool shots? Yeah, no worries. You know what we can do? We can post it in the chat because it's on our YouTube page as well. So you can get a bit of a sense of how exciting that research is. And if Albert does find it, he can let me know, but otherwise we'll put it in the chat. And please do check out our YouTube page and our website for lots of really cool videos and different resources that you can use for free in your classroom anytime. And I just wanted to also briefly touch on one very important part of polar bear research, which is policy. Now, it doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but let me tell you, policy gets stuff done. And that's one exciting area of Polar Bears International's focus in the coming years will be more policy work. And basically what this means is turning research into action through, the politicians that have the power. So one example is that our Chief Scientist Emeritus, Steve Amstrup, he helped write this wonderful research paper this year, directly connecting fossil fuels and sea ice with polar bear survival. And with that research and that data, we were able to take it to the United States government, who has the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which means legally they have to act on climate change when it comes to protecting this species. So we were able to take it to them and have really important policy discussions and hopefully influence change at a level that will actually help protect polar bears. So we're very excited about that. And we will have another webcast on policy coming up later in the season. In a couple of weeks here, we'll be talking a bit more about what that means and how to make it accessible to students and make it not seem like this scary thing. It's just a way to make things happen. And for the rest of the season, we'll have some really great topics. Next week, we are doing an event with Lego, kind of about being innovative and changing the world. So do check that out. And then we are here every single day, actually looking at the polar bears and talking about them. So if you ever have any questions, do feel free to reach out to us. So I'm going to take a couple questions right now, and then we'll see how far we get. So how many cubs can polar bears have at one time? And has this number decreased with the onset of climate change? Thank you. That is a great question. So at one time, polar bear moms have often about 2 cubs. More and more, we're seeing single cubs in some areas, and they can have triplets. And we do see that occasionally. In parts of the world, we are seeing fewer cubs than we used to. And that's, again, just because there's more pressure on the moms. So this is one area here where we maybe have fewer cubs than we used to. But it's always great when we do see cubs. And there are areas that, have cubs. We have a biologist on board today on Buggy One. We've got some researchers visiting, and they saw some really cute, very fat cubs this fall, which was super fun. And that was down in Ontario. So what is the maximum known number of polar bear cubs that polar bear moms had at one time? What would that be? I know there was a mom spotted with 4 cubs at one point, but polar bears actually are known to have adopted other cubs before from other moms. We don't really know why or what kind of spurred that on. So when we saw the mom with 4, not sure if they're all hers or if she adopted one, but that's a really great question. And how do mothers feed the cubs while in the den? And how does she feed herself? So mothers feed their cubs through nursing. So she nurses her cubs, gives them milk from her body, and that's how they grow so fast and so big, and how they get all the nutrition they need at first. And as soon as the cubs kind of hit the ice with their mom, they will start kind of licking at and eating what she's eating, which is the seals. But the cubs will continue nursing from their mom almost pretty much until they're weaned. As they get bigger, they nurse less and less. But we do see cubs nursing until they're even a couple years old. And it's pretty funny when she has male cubs. The males can be almost as big as their mom when they're a couple years old. So when you see a couple big polar bears nursing from a polar bear that's their size or even slightly smaller, it can be kind of a fun sight there. And how does she feed herself? In the den, she doesn't. She's fasting. She's using her own body fat. And that's one amazing thing that polar bears can do. So in this area and many parts of the world, polar bears are able to fast for long periods of time. They can put on so much body fat when they're eating seals. They have a really high conversion rate of eating blubber to put body fat on their own bodies, and they can live off their own body fat for months at a time. And they're able to do that. And those female polar bears in the den, they're able to go 8 months without eating anything and just living off their own body fat. Where we start to put a lot of pressure on polar bears is when we're pushing those limits. They're already at some limits, and now we're pushing them to go longer and longer fasting. And we know that the longer polar bears go without eating, the harder it is on their bodies. We know that lactation for female polar bears does suffer when a female can't eat as much, and when she's on land longer, she can't nurse as long or with milk that's as fatty as it could be. And we know that polar bear bodies have a hard time when they don't get to eat for long periods of time, which would be true for us as well. I don't even like skipping lunch, and polar bears can skip many meals at once. So they are a really incredible animal, and we are so driven and fortunate to be able to work with them and help protect them, particularly moms and cubs who are so special and vulnerable and important to the population. And if you want to help us protect moms and cubs, there's lots of ways you can get involved. So please do check out our website for ideas. There's so many ways to get involved. One of the biggest things that students can do is talk about it. So talk about what you care about, talk about polar bears, or talk about whatever impacts you locally where you are. Is there, an area you like to go camping in or play outside in, and you know that things are changing? Do you have an area where you've been affected by forest fires or flooding? You deserve a protected future. just as much as polar bears do. So everything we're doing for polar bears is good for you too. And so we can all work together to talk about it. Tell your teachers, tell your family, and then maybe take a look at where some energy is coming from in your life. So that's a good thing for young people to be asking the adults in their life too. Where does your energy come from? And are there any possible changes that can be made? So is there solar available in your community? Could your school district maybe convert one of your buses to electric and go from there? What can the adults in your life be doing, and how can you help kind of spur those conversations? And then when you get old enough, you can vote for leaders who care about climate change and who care about protecting your future and the future for polar bears. And we're all going to work together to solve the problem. The great news is that we know what the problem is, and therefore we have solutions. So we can stop burning so many fossil fuels and trapping so much heat in the atmosphere. And we can help protect moms and cubs and all polar bears and ourselves by moving to cleaner energy sources. So we are going to have a video right at the end of this that explains that much more in depth with how you can get involved and what's going on. And yeah, and we'll start to wrap up here. I'm just seeing if there's any more questions, but that's all we have for now on moms and cubs. And any other questions I didn't get to, I can definitely pop into the chat and answer them. And we're already almost at half an hour, so time flies. So thank you so much for joining us for our Tundra Connections webcast today. We hope you learned something new about moms and cubs, or maybe just liked watching the cute videos, which is totally fair. They are so adorable. So we want to thank everyone behind the scenes here again. Thanks, Albert, for running the show today. Thanks, Marisa and Kayla, for monitoring the questions. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for joining us today. Also, huge thanks to Explore.org, our partner in running the Polar Bear Cams. We will have the Polar Bear Cams live streaming all day, every day for the next several weeks. You can see what the polar bears are doing. There's been a lot of cool activity out here this year already. There's been wolves in the area, which is super fun and a little different. There's been foxes, there's been cool birds, and we might even have a seal on the camera, hopefully pretty soon. So check out the cams if you ever get a chance. There's also lots of other wonderful wildlife cams that Explore.org hosts all around the world. So almost any species you're interested in, they might have a cam about it. So check it out. And we also need to thank Frontiers North Adventures for loaning us Tundra Buggy One, where I'm sitting today. Tundra Buggy One is our mobile broadcast studio. I'm on a little Tundra Buggy driving around throughout the day with guests on board to look for polar bears. And that's thanks to Frontiers North Adventures. So it's super fun, and I'm grateful to be back here. If you enjoyed learning today, make sure you ask a teacher or your parent to check more out and to tune into more webcasts in the future, and to look at our website and our social media. We post lots of fun facts and pictures all the time. And thank you for helping us protect the habitats that people and polar bears depend on. If you're a teacher, we have resources on Microsoft Flip and throughout our website. And please also consider taking our feedback survey. We would really appreciate it. We ask about how you're using our materials and what's kind of most important to you and how we could improve for use in your classroom. So everyone, remember to follow your curiosity, use your own strengths and your own skills and your own interests to spur you and work together on solutions. And we can just keep talking about our love for polar bears and how we can help work to solve climate change together. So here's this final video. Thanks for joining us, and I hope that we see you in the near future. Bye, everybody.
Future generations of people and polar bears depend on the decisions and plans that we make today. A polar bear's life cycle is almost exclusively tied to the sea ice. Because polar bears rely on sea ice to hunt, to breed, and sometimes to den, sea ice loss from climate change is their biggest threat, and the reason the bears are listed as vulnerable on the IUCN's Red List of Threatened Species. What we learn about climate change impacts on polar bears in Hudson Bay can be applied across the Arctic to help conserve other populations. Climate change is already affecting some populations of polar bears. Since we get most of our energy from fossil fuels, we are producing huge amounts of carbon dioxide. You see, regular amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere act like a blanket around the Earth, trapping heat and keeping our planet at a stable temperature. However, when we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas for energy, we pump rampant amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This buildup thickens the blanket, trapping too much heat, disrupting the climate, and melting Arctic sea ice. When Arctic waters are cold enough, the top layer freezes into a special type of ice called sea ice. Sea ice is to the ocean what soil is to a forest. It supports the entire Arctic food chain. Food from this marine ecosystem also sustains northern communities. The key to getting the climate back to functioning the way it should, and to preserving a future for polar bears across the Arctic, is to move away from using fossil fuels for energy altogether. The most important thing we can do is vote with the climate in mind to let our leaders know we support a swift transition to renewable energy sources. In the meantime, we can directly participate in and learn more about our local and regional renewable energy options. We can all make a difference outside our own households by influencing where our energy comes from. Because together, we can make sure that polar bears roam the Arctic sea ice for generations to come.